it appears, in the eyes of many, it has gone somewhat flat these days, Simon, at Stamford Bridge. Pochettino himself has said that the flat atmosphere amongst fans is a result of the disappointing performances under his predecessors, Graham Potter and Frank Lampard. He says, yeah, maybe it is a little bit more flat and it's not good because maybe it's a disappointment from a long period. But Stamford Bridge is still very good. Having said that, Simon, what he's saying is, before we came on the scene, yeah, it was going a bit flat, and that's why. Is he making sense with that, do you think? I mean, Pat Nevin goes even further than that. He said, my beloved Chelsea at Stamford Bridge regularly has the matchday atmosphere of a mausoleum on a rainy Monday, quite fitting, as there is a cemetery just behind the main stand. It's all gone flat.
I should imagine it's the sum of all his parts. He hasn't done that much to lift it, has he? I mean, I watch Chelsea and I don't find them particularly engaging to watch. I mean, I watched them the other day against Luton, and the interesting part of the game was what Luton were doing to the game rather than what Chelsea did, which was a clinical performance to go 3-0 up on an away game against Luton. And then the excitement in the game came from Luton's contribution to try and get back in it. If you lose to teams like Nottingham Forest and Brentford, with respect to Brentford and Nottingham Forest, and then you blame it upon the atmosphere of the football stadium rather than the outcomes of your players, highly paid footballers, and your management criteria, then you're falling on probably infertile ground. But he's probably right. Over the 18 months, they've not had a lot to watch, have they? They've had Potter start well and fizzle out. They had the laughable end of the season last year with Lampard, and then you've got Pochettino. But this is what you get with manufactured clubs. Same atmosphere at Manchester City. If the wheels come off at Man City and they're not having a particularly good period of time, we'll see how entrenched their fans are.
So you say this is what you get. Is this a byproduct of being, in your eyes, a manufactured club?
Well, these are wonderful clubs. I mean, Manchester City are a wonderful football club. Malcolm Allison, who managed my team when I grew up in the 70s at Palace, came from that environment and was part of the Joe Mercer revolution that created this wonderful football team in the late 60s at Manchester City. When I say manufactured, I mean the levels of success have not been organically created, have not been created by the natural forces that build football clubs. 3 football clubs really came out of the ether that were manufactured by the wishes of individuals. That was Blackburn Rovers under Jack Walker, Chelsea under Roman Abramovich, and Manchester City under Sheikh Mansour. Manchester City wouldn't be winning leagues and dominating English football if Sheikh Mansour didn't have a vision which imparted his particular brand of loving football by watching 2 games over 11 years, or 12 years or 15 years or whatever it is. So it goes with the territory. It goes with an element of there's a very valuable core base of Manchester City fans, a very valuable core base of Chelsea fans. But when you get to moments where it's not where the success has been, where you've bought and paid for and created success and become acclimatised to it, then all of a sudden when it doesn't become the same thing, because you would have thought that Chelsea now, given what their fans were facing 18 months ago, which was what certain sections of the media were portraying as a complete and utter potential removal of Chelsea from the landscape of football. Their club was going to be closed down with the departure of Roman Abramovich. It was an existential threat. No one really thought that, but it was certain sections of the media that were suggesting that, because someone was always going to buy it, that you would now have a group of Chelsea fans that were so grateful for their club being in existence that there would be nothing but behind it. But that's not modern-day football fans now. Modern-day football fans have a different view about what they're entitled to see and what they think they should watch. And you've watched 18 months of pretty staid experiences at Chelsea. In fact, staid, pedestrian, boring, dysfunctional, mechanical, clunky, not particularly enjoyable to watch, and no particular stars. Yet all they've really read about is the profligacy of their ownership model.
Well, they'll need to be up for it tonight because they're a goal down to Middlesbrough, and you would think, with progress leading them to a final, the Chelsea support will be loud and behind their side. I don't think, as he described Stamford Bridge, a mausoleum, I do not think it will be that tonight. And if it is, I'll be very surprised, because there's a prize to be won here, and the prize at stake is carrying on in the Carabao Cup final and putting Middlesbrough out. So I would have thought there's a lot riding on this for Pochettino tonight, and there's a lot riding on this for Chelsea tonight.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what do you say if you get knocked out of a major cup semi-final by a championship side? Do you say to yourself, well done, and the crowd didn't contribute enough? Or do you say that's a failing? And of course, the newspaper headlines will be all over it if they don't achieve an outcome. But I expect Chelsea probably will.
Yeah.
because they've got better players than Middlesbrough. And in this competition, in a one-off game, they've come back from a 1-0 loss in the first leg against a Championship side that's fully invested, fully motivated, with a raucous atmosphere in the Riverside to go into the mausoleum of Chelsea.
Well, Pochettino is saying maybe it's because it's a little bit flat and it's not that great because it's a disappointment from a longer period, which stretches back beyond him.
But he's right, isn't he? I mean, that wasn't that long ago they were winning the Champions League.
There's Mitch, who's a Spurs fan. Jim Pochettino is like a stand-up comedian who claimed that the last act was so bad that the crowd were still booing it when he was on stage. Spurs being rubbish over the last couple of seasons hasn't stopped Ange lighting the blue touch paper at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is what you were saying. And that's because he plays football the fans enjoy watching, says Mitch, who's a Tottenham fan. He's not wrong in that. The Tottenham fans know what they're going to get and they're going to be entertained.
Yeah,
that's why they're loud, they're vociferous, and they're behind Ange.
There is also, and I agree with that, there is an inherent value for football in the communities of the northern parts of this country because they become the bedrock of the community. Newcastle is the cornerstone of the community. You go to Sheffield and you see these football clubs and you see the lifeblood of it. And you don't have 15 different theatres and a whole metropolitan capital like London that creates a different way of living where people can go to the ballet one weekend or Cirque du Soleil the next and go to football the next. But that doesn't mean...
theatres up north.
Sure, but okay. So we've got the West End in the north. We've got 15 theatres in the north.
You're getting into deep water.
No, I'm not.
With your friends in the north.
I don't have many friends in the north. I don't have that many friends in the south, quite frankly.
And there's somebody else correcting you. Simon Pat Nevin played at Everton and was played in front of one of the best crowds.
Oh, good. So what?
There you go. So that's Tranmere and Everton.
Oh, their atmosphere's good now, is it, at the stadium? They're booing their owners out, jeering everybody. People like Graham Sharp can't even go in the stadium. He played for that football club with great service. He's not allowed in the stadium anymore because he was associated with people that ran the football club in a fashion that the fans don't like.
Let's put it out there what Pat Nevin is saying, that go north and you'll get atmosphere. And Pat is saying Sunderland, Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Chelsea, Newcastle, Manchester City. He says these games are all in cities in the northeast of England. Big clubs who are passionately supported. He says you don't get the same down here. And he says these days Stamford Bridge can be a bit of a mausoleum. Chelsea fans, what would you say to that? Are you going to be loud and proud tonight? You have to be, because there's a lot at stake. Vernon, good to speak to you, Vernon, Chelsea fan, who's a regular on our show. Good morning. Yeah. What do you make of what Pat Nevins saying? Stamford Bridge these days can be something of a mausoleum.
Well, yeah, like a lot of clubs all around the country, up north as well, by the way. I've heard Liverpool fans complaining many times on phone-ins about the atmosphere at Anfield, and Anfield's deemed as one of those places where the atmosphere is always great, and it isn't. It isn't anywhere, Jim. I'm telling you, a lot of it's down to the atmosphere around the club itself, and there's a feeling of doom and gloom at Chelsea at the moment. There is. I'm not going to lie. And doesn't mean to say that the atmosphere will make it great tonight, by the way, because believe you me, if Chelsea win 3-2 in the last minute or 4-2 and go through, the camera will be shaking, Jim.
Yes.
The atmosphere will go mental. And that's just like a lot of clubs. And I do get it, what Pat Nevin's saying in a way about the mausoleum thing, but then a lot of games are like kicking off early, like the Arsenal game the other day. And it's so hard for football fans to get up for games that kick off at midday. It really is. It's a different type of thing. You're half asleep. It's just different. So forget going early games. Everyone's early games the atmosphere's flat, Jim. That's unfair. With Chelsea, last year was the worst thing at the Chelsea. And I've been supporting Chelsea since the 70s when I was a little kid. And that's the worst year I can remember for decades. It was absolutely dismal. Because Roman's gone, Chelsea fans are really, really not getting over it yet. Simon's right what he said. People were scaremongering. I mean, I know 1 minute Chelsea would disappear off the face of the earth, but I was concerned. But unfortunately, the people who have come in, I don't feel they quite get football, and I don't think they quite get Chelsea. Roman really got himself into the history of Chelsea, Jim. He bought into it.
Yes.
And the fans idolise him, Jim. They really, really do, honestly. They idolise Roman.
Vernon, not for the first time. A really good call from you. Thank you.
I mean, you've got the biggest club in English football winning everything, with their manager constantly telling everyone that the fans need to support the club more. Pep Guardiola constantly calling it. And, as far as the Newcastle fans, well, wonderful. You've got a club at this moment, but empty vessels make the most noise.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.